week we discussed about state capitalism, right? And we discussed the types of economies. So now we will discuss types of economies, we will compare, we will discuss about the advantages and disadvantages, okay? And then we will make some revision. So, number one. First, what is state or socialistic economy? Who can explain it to me? What is socialistic economy?
It's the economy that spreads the resources and among the people, and so everything belongs to population.
It is another collectivism.
Yes.
Okay? Collectivism. So, all means of production are owned by the population.
And proportional distributed.
Okay? And the end result, whatever produced in the economy, it is proportionally distributed among the people. Okay? So all people, they own the entire economy. So let's say if the economy consists of 2 people, the end result will be proportionally distributed. 4 people, each receives quarter. Okay? And another thing is, because it's socialism, social gains or social factor is very important. If economy, of course, it does not consist of purely all physically active people, right? Physically active people. In order to supply those physically not active people, social welfare system is nicely established. And we said during the lecture, can you give me an example of any country which was running the country using socialistic economy?
Socialistic.
Pure socialistic.
No.
Pure socialistic was not experienced in the history, okay? Because it's impossible. We said that not everyone, they are equally the same. We said that 5 fingers are not equal because we have, very good people in the economy and very bad, very hardworking, very lazy, very corrupt, and very pure people. Because of that allocation of end results proportionally distributed among people, it's impossible. Alright? But we said there are signs of socialistic economy in each type of economy. What were they?
Social welfare, health care.
Social welfare, healthcare, education, right? So which is all economies, they are doing it, they are practicing it, and they're implementing in the economy, which comes from the socialistic economy studies, okay? Alright, good. Next one. Planned economy. What is planned economy? Why do we call it planned economy?
Because they plan everything. Government plan. 3 years, 5 years.
So the economy is managed through plans, yes?
Government.
Can you give me an example of planned economy?
USSR.
USSR.
When Lenin
USSR, it is the example of planned economy, okay? How is it different from socialistic economy? Does planned economy have any relationship with socialistic economy?
Yes. Yes. Some kind of socialist republics.
When Lenin came into power after revolution, okay, what he meant, it was socialistic economy, collectivism, okay? It was socialistic economy, he was implementing it. But it was actually not socialistic, but planned.
Because they have private sector.
Yes, it was they have private sectors too. So now, planned economy, usually from experience that we know, it's built on socialistic economy. It's built on socialistic economy. So what? For example, during Soviet Union, there were 15 member states, right? 15. And based on the plan, for example, if it was some kind of textile industry, or close manufacturing, the central government, they have to make plans, yes, from Moscow. So for example, in terms of t-shirt production, and regarding infrastructure of Soviet Union, infrastructure was allocated entire among all 15 states. Uzbekistan was mainly supplying agricultural goods like cotton. Kazakhstan mainly wheat and some other. And Ukraine was doing supplying other goods. So it was entire infrastructure, like one country. For example, even though Uzbekistan was, let's say, supplying those cotton, then these t-shirts were produced in some other states of Soviet Union. Okay? And central government, they were making plan. For example, in terms of t-shirt production, they were setting 5-year plan. Within 5 years, in Soviet Union, let's suppose, 5 or 50 million t-shirts should be produced. Because in Uzbekistan, the number of population is mainly compared to our other neighbors. For them, 10 million pieces should be supplied to Uzbekistan. Relatively small, with small population for Tajikistan, 200,000 t-shirts. And that way they used to allocate. And based on that one, each country, each state, they had to follow very strong plans. Do we have the signs of that plan in Uzbekistan today?
Yes.
We do.
Yes.
Still we have it. Okay? If you go to mining sector, gold mining or any type of mining, they are still following those plans. They have monthly plans to do. If they, by the end of the month, if they are perfectly done with their plan, they will receive additional bonuses in mining sector. And again, we have some plans, for example, in our cotton industries.
To reduce.
Each region, still we have certain type of plans they have to follow. Okay? But of course, it's not like in Soviet Union. It was very strict. If you are not fulfilling that one, you are in big trouble. So those times have passed already. Okay, good. So this is plan. So economy is managed through planning. All right. Command economy. What about command economy?
No.
How is it different from planned economy? Isn't it the same?
No. It's like fully asking their own fundamental states, and there is no private organizations.
So, command economy and planned economy, it is interchangeably used terminologies. Okay? It's as if it's same. But we know that in planned economy, what is different from command economy, private ownership is allowed. When Lenin was leading the country, he was allowing private ownership. Okay. Of course, main industries were managed by the government, but still, if you want to start a business, it was no problem. Okay, good. But in terms of command economy, everything is government control. No private ownership. If you are engaged in private ownership or private business, you have a chance of being convicted on crime. Because it was crime. Okay? It was crime. Okay. Good. Next. Computational economic plan.
Yes, the one.
When computers.
And how is it different from plan? It's also planned economy, but there is another.
Government use computers to estimate how much goods is supplying to
Collect data. Computer collect data.
So now, what was one of the main problems in command and planned economies?
inefficiency.
Inefficiency caused through
people. Yeah, like economists
Because
have
people
planned how
work.
much, which is not indicated by real people.
So the inefficiency was practiced in Soviet era because of inadequate information. Alright? As I already mentioned. So central government in Moscow, they were deciding what we wear, what we consume. And I said that one person, an economist who is in Moscow, who has never traveled to Uzbekistan and has no idea about our culture, our taste, our likes, our environment, okay, weather, climate, they were making all the decisions. Inadequate information. And that inadequate information used to cause a lot of inefficiencies. Okay? Inefficiencies. But computational economy, it's the way to reduce those problems. In 1971, who implemented? In which country?
In Chile.
In 1971, right, in Chile, under the leadership of Salvador Allende, right? He became the president of Chile at the time. He tried to implement computational economic planning. What's the benefit of computational planning compared to planned economy itself, without computation?
Well, it could not probably count the tax, but as far as like how much should be produced and supplied, they counted for that at least, in theory.
So, you know, it's the like early signs of big data practices. You know, in Chile, right, what they did, they installed all telex machines in all companies and corporations, yes?
Yeah.
And they were providing data. 1,000 shoes were sold today out of 10,000. This much demand. But in other regions, we did not sell anything. While here, you know, it's not enough. We sold everything, but it's not enough. And this information was reaching the central government. It was that one. Where a central government, they could do adequate planning based on real data that they have. Oh, now, regarding Uzbekistan, it seems that they don't need this type of shoes. Rather, from now, we don't have to supply it. But there is very high demand in Kazakhstan, we have to direct it to that area. Which Soviet enduring they were not able to do it because of that lack of information. Okay? So, computational economy. So, was it successful economy in the case of Chile?
We don't know.
Because
It was removed 2 years.
We don't know, right? Even though it's implemented, after 2 years that project was, cyberspace was
Over.
finished. Augusto Pinochet, he led coup, and he was removed from his position, right? And what happened? Market economy was established in Chile. Okay? So we don't know about this one. Who knows? Maybe if during Soviet Union, if they were able to establish that type of computational using those computer technologies, maybe Soviet Union could be much stronger than it used to be. It was a very strong country. That it could be very strong by avoiding all of those inefficiencies.
Why did it fail?
Why did it fail? So there are many reasons for that. Okay. I would really advise to watch some documentaries. There are a lot. Okay. Regarding those, it's political issues. There are many reasons.
So
okay?
not economical. Not economical.
No, why not? It's economical reasons are too. So most of the Western countries, they were considering that this country will fail because they experiencing too much inefficiency. Inefficiency, it means that the economy gets weaker and weaker and weaker. It's one factor. Of course, political factors on the other side. All right. And not only political, there were demographic issues too. Okay. Germans, they wanted to be divorced, right, from Pope. It happened for many reasons, actually. All right. Good. Many reasons. It's too much to talk. Okay. Good. Oh, by the way, regarding computational economic planning, in our university, we are planning to open a new course, economics with data analytics. Okay, in the future. which means that it will be a more advanced level of learning economics. Okay, it's more than one. So, for example, I can give you one example. You know, I think you understand about big data, right? They try to analyze all the, economic, in the economy what's happening through data. In the case of Korea, yes, they were analyzing all the data regarding the trains, those customers who are taking the trains, okay? Those customers of taking trains. And they figured out one strange, thing in the data. There is one observation in the data, okay? Which means one individual who buys the ticket and the day of the travel, just before departure of, the 10 minutes or 20 minutes, before the departure of the train, that person cancels his ticket. Which means that if it's 20, I don't remember what, if it's 20 minutes before the departure, you can refund your money. Okay? You can refund. And they figured out that it's happened, many times. Person buys it and cancels it. Buys it, cancels it. And when they check the timing, it was, that person was practicing it for 1 year or two. All right? And it's because of analyzing the data. No one, was, spying behind that person, right? Just look at the data that something is wrong with this customer. And then they did real search. Like you, or maybe a bit older than you. So he was buying ticket for that speed train KTX, which is expensive, from his home country to Seoul to other places of Korea. Just before sitting the train 20 minutes before, he used to cancel it. But it turns out that if it's canceled within that time, when he takes the train, that a person who checks the train, he's not able to figure out whether it is cancelled or not. It's not shown in the data. He was very smart to do it. And he was doing it for many years. A few years maybe. Once it was figured out, maybe he saved, okay, by cheating that KTX, company, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, maybe he saved. Okay. Then after that one, the government of Korea, he penalized him for tens of thousands of dollars. And this news was spread to the entire country. Okay? It is one very good thing about data. If you have very nice data, you can do a lot of things. So therefore, this field is becoming more and more popular. For example, if you go to department stores, right? If you go to clothes section, you can find certain type of drinks or things to eat, which has nothing to do with clothes. Or if you go to clothes section, you will find some kind of, clothes or something totally not related to food. Why they do it? Because they studied the data. All right? So over the years with that research experience, they know if they put that type of item in that section, there will be higher sale in that department. They try to read people's mind. So therefore, that technology, that computers, power is increasing everywhere. So computational economy, if they were able to implement it perfectly like this, analyzing big data, it could be, I think, very good. But unfortunately, we don't have. Okay? What about capitalistic economy?
Yeah, I would say it's private, no government ownership of anything.
No interaction.
So the role of government is almost close to zero in the economy, right? And what is the role of government actually? In capitalism.
Defense, healthcare.
Internal, external security. Managing the police, okay, the justice system, all right? That one. Okay, good. And why it's called capitalistic? Because everything is owned privately. Or Adam Smith's invisible hand controls the economy. Okay? Privately or by private institutions. Good. All right. Next one. Mixed economy.
Yeah, it's with socialistic and capitalistic.
So it's the mixture of socialistic and capitalistic economy. Why do we consider it as mixture of these two?
Because they still have like healthcare, for example, they have it. Also social welfare nets.
Why do we say it's mixed? Why capitalistic?
Why? Because private ownership is still there.
Yes.
Parts are still owned by the government.
It's free market, right? It's free market. But the role of government here is also plays important role, right? What is the role of government? It is too big
Government?
in mixed economy?
No, it's small.
No, government stays away from business activities, but they step in when it is needed.
Right.
All right. And on the other hand, in mixed economies, government they receive taxes, right, which are spent for social purposes.
So in
Education,
no taxes. In capitalistic, no taxes.
So there is still tax
No, in capitalistic.
in capitalistic too. But how can you manage the defense system? Okay, good. Next, state capitalist economy.
Yeah, it's where the government has big champions or whatever.
Why it is state capitalism?
The government controls main industries upstream.
Is it capitalism?
Yeah, because downstream are still controlled by the private owners.
Capitalism we know, right? Privately owned. What about state capitalism?
So state.
It is still capitalism. But the main actor is government. Government is, controlling. So they make state capitalism. Okay? Alright? Good. If you compare mixed economy with capitalistic economy, today we call, those capitalistic nations, like when we say capitalistic countries, we refer to
US.
those Western countries, United States, Canada, okay, others, where they are more likely mixed economies, right?
Yes.
Because there isn't any pure capitalistic country, because there is government intervention. Okay, good. If you compare capitalistic economy and mixed economy, what are the advantages of one of them? Which one is better?
Mixed economy.
Mixed one.
Why? What's your argument?
Because when crisis happens,
Yeah, government helps. Also, sometimes government intervention is necessary. There's monopolies.
Good. So, regarding mixed economy, because the government's role, it is important. For example, in capitalistic economy, all right, there is something called a business cycle, all right, which means economy sometimes grows.
sometimes fall.
After one point, it will
Fall.
slow down, and it grows.
Yeah.
It may slow down.
Fiscal monetary policy.
If it grows very high, there is very high likelihood going down. It is market activities. But if there is government intervention, and if it reaches this peak, and because of pessimistic views of consumers, if they reduce consumption, it will be short reduction and will cause a recession, right? If there is government role, if they are able to intervene, they can minimize this kind of problems. When economy is this natural level, is somewhere here, they will start implementing fiscal policies. Because economies will be growing very fast, it's like Keynes who advised, they can increase government taxes. They can increase taxes and decrease government spending in order to make it slower. They can do it. And as a result, the government budget will grow. Okay? Anyway, it's an macroeconomic question where in mixed economies that crisis will be less likely because of the intervention in this point. Or if it's at the bottom, it is only government who can help to avoid this problem to reach the natural level again through policies. Okay? Fiscal and monetary. Good? All right. Good. Provide arguments about the advantages and disadvantages of the following economies. First, planned or command economy. What are the advantages of planned economy? Advantages.
Well, there will be.
You may consider the case of USSR as command economy.
Low unemployment rate.
Low
Unemployment rate.
unemployment
Rate.
rate. All right, it is 1.
Income is less.
Income inequality is less. Good point. Income inequality is low. Why? It was really low.
Poverty level is also
The poverty level is also low. Why income inequality was low?
resources are spread more evenly. And no private ownership means no capital, it's those factors.
It's mainly because of that. If capitalism or private ownership is not allowed, it is impossible to become millionaires. It was impossible. If it's impossible, it means that the people who are earning too much, who will cause income inequality, will not be likely to happen. Okay? It was main reason. Okay. Poverty level was very low during Soviet Union. Why?
Incomes were almost the same.
Unemployment rate.
Because
Because
of
of
the
unemployment.
Unemployment is less.
Yeah. Because of unemployment, the poverty level was low.
And prices are also low. Right?
There wasn't monopoly salaries.
There wasn't monopolies. They were all monopolies.
But they were controlled by the government.
Yeah, actually, they were monopolists. Okay, government was controlling. Government is monopolist. Okay. It was they how much to charge, how much not to charge. Poverty level was low, as I said. Planned economy is also based on socialistic economy. So during Soviet Union, it was really hard to find a poor person begging outside because social welfare system was properly established. And unemployment rate also was very low. Okay. And at the same time, but of course poverty level is high in some other exceptional countries, right? North Korea, poverty is still their type of command economy. In the United States, it was low because they are too strong. One reason. Where those sources come from? From many sources. Good, next one. Oh, what about disadvantages? What about the disadvantages of planned or main problem is inefficiency, right? Inefficiency, as we already discussed. It was the main problem, inefficiency. And
How about corruption?
corruption level was very high. Why?
Because the government
It is state-owned, okay? It belongs to the government, and one person is controlling it. Because it's not his private, he could abuse his power based on corrupt practices. Okay? Good. And we said that, in planned or command economies of black market activities were relatively high.
Because there was a shortage.
Because of shortage.
Or sort of.
During Soviet Union, there was very high demand for Italian shoes. Very high demand for European or American jeans or sneakers, okay? Those things. Because there was demand, and there were a group of people, minorities, who used to get that advantage in order to maximize their profits, okay? Private ownership was not allowed, of course, but there were people who had tried to trade, okay? Good. Next. Capitalistic economy. Advantages.
Efficiency.
Efficiency. Why efficiency?
The invisible hand of the market.
Capitalistic economy, it means competition, right?
Prices.
Free
Established.
competition. So prices, who determines the prices? Market. Demand and supply, right? Okay. This is one advantage. Because its efficiency, the cost will be lower to gain bigger market share. The right of goods will be higher, right? Good. What about disadvantages?
Recession. Income inequality.
Good point. It is, high likely that the capitalistic nation, they may experience economic recessions. Okay.
Income inequality.
Income inequality. Why?
Because someone makes millions.
Private ownership. People who are capable, who has very strong, good business skills, they will be getting richer and richer and richer. And on the other hand, those people who are lazy, their life will not change. Okay, good. Any other disadvantages?
Monopolies. Because government is no control. That could be monopolies.
Monopolies is also likely. Okay. Monopoly is also likely. So if, of course, they are able to beat all the competitors, right, in the competition, so then monopoly can be practiced, okay, even though it's open economy for competition. No one can guarantee that there will be one very successful businessman that becomes monopolist. Okay, good. Next. State capitalism. Advantages. So during the lecture it was not listed.
Stability. The government controls these companies.
So does it mean stability?
Yeah, if the government is efficient, and if the government is smart, then they will do this. Yes, and they will receive FDI and whatnot. Investable by China.
Okay. Why do they receive more?
Because of the.
We know that's state-owned enterprises, right? According to the statistics, they are receiving 1/3 of emerging economies investment. So the two emerging economies, 1/3 is now goes to the share of Chinese state-owned enterprises.
Because they're protected by the government.
Yeah. They are trying to minimize the risks. That's one reason. Okay. And another thing regarding state capitalistic economies compared to capitalistic economies or mixed economies. So state capitalistic economies that they became more popular, or which means that some countries they try that state capitalism seems better than capitalistic nations. It happened after Great Recession. Great Recession. When Great Recession happened that we talked about last week, right? In 2008 and 9, that one of the super powerful nations, United States, they experienced that kind of very strong economic crisis. Where government was also, they tried to minimize the role, but still it was badly affected, right? We know. After that one, state capitalism, okay, they were considered, it's the best model for the economy. Why? Even though it's mixed economy, there is government intervention, mainly based on free market activities. There is a likelihood of experiencing economic crisis. While in state capitalism, those things are not experienced, and there is less likelihood of experience. So it was the belief of some countries, and they were now thinking that it seems that state capitalism model is better than mixed economic model. Okay, good. And are there any disadvantages of state capitalism?
Well, the author of the workshop anyway was very negative on state capitalism. It's like only
Because the one who wrote it, he was anti-state capitalism.
Yeah, it was very obvious. That's for sure. But yeah, it's like you said, it's only for the beginning. It's my solution. But at the end, it should be turned to mixed economy.
Why? Mainly.
Corruption, anyway.
Yeah, corruption actually is everywhere. Even in capitalistic nations, corruption is practiced. But corruption is relatively higher in state capitalist countries because it's state-owned still. Inefficiency practice is also relatively higher compared to capitalistic nations. Okay? These are also some disadvantages. Good. Now we will discuss the role of state capitalistic actors in countries like China and Russia. Who are the main actors in the economy?
Government. 62 for Russia and 80 for China.
State-owned enterprises, right? We can see the biggest players are national oil and gas corporations, right? Okay. How important are those sectors to Russia?
Very largely.
Oil and gas.
Very important. Very much.
Russian economy is so strong mainly because of those resources that they have. So now, because they have lots of gas and oil reserves and they are selling it in the world market, it gives them huge revenue, right? So it's very important. Okay, what about China?
Huawei.
Industries?
Do they produce oil?
No. But they want to, China Sea, whatever.
So when we are talking about, those producing, that we don't mean that one.
Maybe labor force?
For China, it's even more important than Russia.
Because they don't have the resources.
If they don't have those oils and gas supplied to Chinese economy will die. Its main, energy resources. It's very important. Russia, they will not be, able to receive. But if you compare Russia and China is more dependent on oil, the economy itself. Okay? So, in terms of manufacturing, of course, they are not taking those oil from the beneath of Chinese land, but they are bringing in those, raw oil from other countries, from Russia, from Africa, and they are making, all of them whatever those processes for making gasoline or kerosene, whatever, and supplying to the economy. It's very important. Okay. And what about state-owned enterprises, upstream industries?
Yeah,
What kind of? Can you give me the examples of that? Which is important to the government?
electricity.
Power generation. Right.
Oil, gas, petrol. Yeah, oil and gas.
Yes, it's there.
Oh,
And what about the bank?
Financial, yes. Financial institutions, yes, government, privately owned. Some cases we have.
Yeah, the most important ones. They're usually notified.
Weapon manufacturing.
Yeah.
Ports, okay? Shipping. These are all under government control. All mining sectors, under government control. Telecommunication, media, 100% mainly under government control because they are very important. Okay? Very important. So they are those state-owned enterprises. So does state capitalism allow private ownership?
Yes.
It does, right? And as a result, we know we have some private-owned national champions, right? What do we mean by those national champions? Who are they?
Cartel.
Companies
which are supported by government. what they're supposed to.
Why does government support them?
Because important is they will bring
Depend
revenue.
on their, you know,
It's important for
they
the
influence
economy.
our economy.
Maybe Huawei or some other, they are privately owned businesses in China, okay, Huawei. But government, they strongly support them because they're national champions. Because if they expand in global market, China will get richer. In Uzbekistan, it's Artel. We are trying to support them because it's very important industry. Champions, okay, good. Sovereign wealth funds or investment portfolios in state capitalistic nations. For example, China Investment Corporation. All right, China Investment Corporation, which is sovereign wealth fund of China. If you consider that one is very successful story. In 2007, they sold bonds, okay? Bonds. By selling those bonds, they were able to generate $200 billion. All right? It was under their management, all those assets, $200 billion. And now, if you consider their asset management in terms of value, it is almost $1 trillion. It was 200 billion, 5 times larger. Okay? Which means that they were able, using this money, financial capital, they were able to very efficiently invest, generate profits. So now, this corporation is getting larger and larger and larger. The asset is not only this in China, now they are buying billions of dollars cost assets in the United States. Billions of dollars assets cost in Russia, in other countries. It becomes so strong and wide and big, which is wealth funds of China. Okay? Very successful story. Good. So now, please watch a video. Pay attention to all details.
Chinese history for the past 30 years has been a story of economic growth.
There's never really been an economic revolution quite like China's. You know, the most populous country in the world, also enjoying the most rapid economic growth in history. An industrial revolution is far more rapid than in Britain or America, for example.
We've never seen so many people come out of poverty so quickly. We've never seen so many people go from the rural countryside into the cities so quickly. What it took Europe 150 years to do in the Industrial Revolution, China has done in 30 years.
In 1979, Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping called on the country to combine socialist ideology with elements of a pragmatic market economy under the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, reportedly telling the Chinese people to get rich is glorious.
After Mao died and Deng Xiaoping rose to power, that was one of the great events, I think, of the 20th century. What he did was, if you will, decommunize or decentralize much of the economy of China.
There's some economists who think that this year China's going to contribute more real GDP growth to the global economy than the US, Europe, and Japan combined.
We can think of China as one big factory, and this factory has to keep churning in order to keep up the economic growth. There's still a lot of unlocked resources or idle resources.
But in recent years, growth has begun to slow.
The double-digit GDP growth that we saw in the 1990s and the early 2000s was an exceptional era. It will never be repeated again because that was this extraordinary export-led economy matched by a demographic dividend of very low young age moving up to a middle-aged working population.
annual growth rates 10 years ago, 9, 10, 11%, now about 6.5%. The question is, what's the reason for the slowdown compared to the earlier growth rates? And I think it's just natural.
Even though there is a headline growth slowdown, China's economy is still growing at a much bigger rate than it has before in terms of real output, just because it's so much bigger now.
It is a function of the need to rein in some of the economic development channels that were getting out of control. China has severe air pollution issues, environmental degradation that pervades almost every corner of the country. That's a function of unbridled economic development.
Beijing now wants to shift away from manufacturing towards a service-oriented economy.
It initially was focusing on manufacturing. It also focused on trying to bring in foreign companies who would use China's low-cost labor along the coastline and assemble things for export. But as this developed, and as they realized there's a need to start transitioning their economy into something more sustainable, they realized they had to build up services.
And that is hard. You have to do it in a way that's sustainable, that creates as few social dislocations as possible, while at the same time delivering for people on a certain level of economic growth to which they've been accustomed.
What you see in their data is the service sector is growing rapidly, consumption is growing rapidly. That's great. You know, I was just in China. Young people are out in restaurants and cafes, and they're buying cars.
Chinese consumption as a portion of China's GDP has certainly grown, and that transition is happening. But interestingly, the roads are still being built, the high-speed rails are still being built, and this investment-led system is kind of still moving on. Not at the same pace as it was, say, 10 years ago, but I would argue it hasn't slowed enough to bolster the meaningful transition to a consumer-based economy.
I hope you were able to see certain things. Alright, good. So let me ask you some questions about the video. It's about China. Question number 1. What kind of extraordinary changes has China experienced in the past 30 years?
Industrial revolution.
Industrial revolution.
Or decrease of poverty.
Decrease of poverty. From our second week classes, we know how it was, they were able, from 88% they were able to reduce to less than 2% absolute poverty level.
People move from rural areas to cities.
Urbanization, sharp changes, right? Economic growth. It is the only country for many years they were growing to double-digit numbers, over 10%. Okay, good. Next one. How different was the speed of industrial revolution in China compared to highly industrialized countries in Europe and the United States?
6 times faster.
Five times, yeah.
So, for them it took many years, right? For Europeans, according to the argument, it took 150 years. But China
30 years.
industrialized within 30 years. Why it was so fast?
Because in 1970,
Good government program.
yeah,
And also they were export oriented.
And why Europe was so slow?
Well,
Because there was so much labor force.
there are many reasons.
maybe FDI, they didn't receive so much.
So long. It is, that you will study. When Europe, they were industrializing, okay? They were doing from scratch. Do you understand? Or they were developing plants, or they were inventing technologies in order to make industrialization, which is already in place in the world, it's available. For Chinese economic growth to be very fast, it's because of those industries which are available already. Chinese, if they want to, for example, establish certain type of industries, they already have lessons to learn from other countries. What kind of technology should be used? If it's not available, it's available from industrialized countries, they could buy it and implement. So their rate was too fast. Okay? If China was doing it from zero like Europe, for them it would take many years. Okay, good. How important is the role or contribution of Deng Xiaoping, okay, in the transformation of Chinese economy.
Yeah, he glorified getting rich. It's good thing.
So he came into the, he raised to the power after Mao Zedong, after him. And what was his contribution to Chinese economy?
To convert. He kind of implemented capitalistic stuff into the socialistic ideology.
So what he said, don't follow very strict communistic ideologies. So now we have to introduce those free market activities too. Getting rich is a very good thing. Okay? So he introduced. And if he raised to the power in 1979, where after 79, poverty level sharply started reducing in China, and economic growth started increasing. Okay? With that type of state capitalistic move. Good? Next one. What is the reason for economic slowdown in China?
Because it's nearing the level of development already. All the technologies are already implemented.
So, right. So look, in 90s it was very sharp, right? For let's suppose. In 19s, they were, car industries, automobile industries. As a result of this contribution, they started growing fast. Let's say later they introduced electronic industry because of this contribution fast. And later something else, fast growth. But now they established everything already. All growth tools are already there. So therefore now it's slower. Even though it's slow, it's much higher compared to most of the developed countries. On average, okay, 3, 4, 5 growth is very good thing. Good. To which sector of the economy China has been placing more emphasis in recent years?
Service.
Or service sector. Right? So now they're trying to move to service sector, which most of developed countries are practicing. Okay? Because now they are mostly, the industry-based country, their production. And now, because in service sector there is very high profit expected, right? They are trying to move to service sector.
What was that last thing he said in the video about moving to consumer-based economy or something?
Yes, consumer-based economy. Another thing, look. For example, if you consider GDP, right? GDP was growing in China. What are the components of GDP? Consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. The share of these three factors was the highest, while consumption was not that much high. But now, the consumption level is growing. This is the most important thing here. If you consider all consumption, that the GDPs of countries, the main contribution comes from consumption. If consumption grows, it indicates real good change. Investment, for example, if they are receiving or government spending is increasing, it doesn't mean that people's lives are improving. Government can spend billions of dollars for building certain type of projects, which may not improve their lives. But if we see that the proportion of consumption is growing, it's real indication that people's lives are improving in the economy. So now China is practicing it. Okay? This one is getting more and more and more. So, all right. Discuss the types of economies in relation with previous 9 topics that we already studied. Consider only planned state capitalistic and capitalistic economies. All right. So now, which means that now we have to make 3 groups. So please make one group over here, second group over there, and third group. All right? Please make. So group 1, group 2, group 3. All right. So look, group 1. Now you should provide arguments, okay, based on planned economy. assume that your country, you are implementing planned economy, okay? Group B, you have to consider state capitalistic economy. And group C, you have to consider capitalistic economy, okay? Planned economy, state capitalistic economy, and capitalistic economy. Alright? So now, question number 1 for discussion is, what is the role of globalization in each economy? The role of globalization in planned economy. Okay? Also consider the level of anti-globalization sentiments. So you have only 30 seconds for discussion, then I will start asking questions. Go ahead. Because we have many, 9 questions. All right. So let's start with capitalists. Group C. What is the role of globalization in your economy? Does it play any role?
Yes. In capitalistic economies, FDI increases and the country started to trade. It increases import and export. And by capitalistic economies, the production increases and the country moves to the world market.
Okay. But in capitalistic economies, in other words, the role of globalization is very important and supported. Because it's privately owned or by institution to maximize profit, if you want to get richest or to get, very successful business, you are not satisfied with local domestic market itself. You have to go global, which is globalization. Okay? Good. What about state capitalists? The role of globalization, does it play any role?
Yes.
You may consider China as a case.
Yes, it plays a crucial role because they get a lot of foreign direct investment. So investment is one of the components of globalization. So it's very important for them. So they were able to improve their economy through investment and trade as well. So they were trading with a lot of countries.
So which means that globalization plays an important role because of those trading opportunities and investment flow opportunities. Okay, good. What about planned economy?
Things are bad, we don't know what to do.
Yes, it's enough.
Management, that's it. We don't like to go like that.
So actually, in pure planned economy does not mean that it's not supported. But during Soviet Union, okay, where it was very closed economy, right? So globalization was not supported, okay? So in West they tried to avoid the effect of East, okay, those Soviet, or in Soviet era they tried to avoid Western effect. So therefore, if it's open for globalization, it means that all flow of information, flow of goods and services, which for some like it was disliked. Okay, good. Next. How severe is the level of poverty and income inequality or wealth inequality in these economies? Problems of poverty and inequality in planned economy, state capitalistic economy, and capitalistic economy. 30 seconds. All right, let's start with planned economies. What about the problem of poverty level?
No poverty.
No poverty. In the case of Soviet Union, poverty level was very low. Why?
Everyone had access to
welfare system. It's mainly socialistic, the economies, studies worlds implement.
Yes.
What about inequality?
No rich people, at least not officially.
Because private ownership was not allowed, or, that there was less likely to have those gaps between rich and poor. Good. So the level of poverty and income inequality was the lowest. But there are exceptional cases too. If we consider, for example, North Korea's command economy, they're also based on plans, poverty level is also high there too. Alright? Good. Capitalists.
Well,
poverty level and income inequality level.
now, in those economies, there was a high level of poverty and inequality because rich people become richer and the poor stayed poor because who had business skills like the marketing skills, they got richer because they knew the ways of getting money, while the poor only worked from 9 to 5 and stayed poor.
Alright. So now if you look at the statistics, indeed, in capitalistic nations, that the gap between rich and poor is very high. But when you consider the poverty level in capitalistic nations compared to other, those Western countries, we call them capitalistic nations even though they're mixed economies, right? But poverty level of those countries compared to other countries is lower.
Because GDP is high, or not?
Because their economic growth is, the economies are stronger. If GDP, as you said, is bigger, if the economy is growing and it's strong economy, it means that the low level of poverty. Okay? Good. State capitalists.
Level of poverty and inequality is not so high, but still it is. So it exists, and due to the government role in our economy, so level of poverty and inequality is
can be controlled.
Less, yes, controlled and is less than in capitalist economy.
Good. Right. So it's government because it's playing active. So if they want to pay more emphasis on social welfare system, they may be able to control those things, both inequality and poverty. All right. Good. But in socialistic economy, because there are three still young economies, it's still high. Good. How important is the role of international trade for each economy? And what about its volume in each economy? International trade. The importance of international trade for planned state capitalist and capitalist economies. Weren't they trading with other countries?
They did actually. They did.
The cars.
They were trading, okay? They were trading. And what was their trade, what merchandise they were trading?
So they were exporting water, that's for sure.
The main export that they did as Russia today, they were exporting oil and gas.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It was the main income comes from abroad, okay? And agricultural products too. It was the main. And Soviet countries, they also wanted to trade, but because most of the trade, it was controlled by Western countries, there were restrictions, okay? All right, good. But the volume of trade of planned economies was low, okay? Low. What about state capitals? Trade.
International trade plays.
How is it important to China?
It plays vital role, so they can get a lot of money through international trade, and volume is not so high as in capitalistic one because government will control it so that all products will not go and something will left for its population and it will be spread.
Why did China become so strong nation? Because of trade. Okay? Because of trade. So now they are getting bigger. As if you can see the individual countries, their trade volume is the highest compared to other countries. Very important. Okay? And the volume also is very high. China is in the first and the second, always. Now, what about capitalists? Trade. International trade.
Trade was the most important sphere in this economy because this economy was concentrated on the manufacturing and collaborating with other countries. So the trade was the most important sphere and the main flow of money.
Alright. So, regarding international trade for capitalists, it's very important. Okay? So, capitalistic nations, they become so rich, G7 or G8, so they became very rich because of trade. Alright? Because of trade. So, they are maximizing profit through resources available and all of those trade transactions that they are making with other countries. All right. Next. How can you explain economic integration, okay, in relation with the types of economies? Economic integration in relation with the types of economies. You know all the steps, right? Preferential trading arrangement, free trade area, customs union, common market, economic union. So, this kind of questions you may expect as essay type questions.
Yeah, very hard question. We are already economically because of we are in the science with
Okay, let's start with planned economy. What's the role of economic integration? So, Soviet Union was the highest level of economic integration, economic union. Those 15 republics, they made one economy, where they had single currency, single policies, fiscal, monetary, right? Labor mobility was perfect, same currency, one government. It was not only political union, but it was also, sorry, not economic, but also political union.
But we're not that friendly with other countries.
What about there? It was one republic, making more integration with other countries.
Yeah, they did, I think, make integration
Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Who knows? Is that the Soviet Republic was more and more successful. The number of republics could increase, making better economic union. Afghanistan, they were expecting to have it as another state, but they did not agree to become. Okay.
They intervened, yes, in
Yes,
1979.
actually, all of those changes were happening there, and it did not happen because of some other reasons. Okay, not discuss it. All right, state capitalism, economic integration.
So
let's suppose China again. Are they interested to make economic integration with other countries?
Yes. So, for example, previously they have some economic integration with USA, but now they don't. Yes.
They had some kind of preferential treatment.
So, in order to make trade and make
increase the volume of trade.
Yes.
Good. What do you think? Do Chinese, are they interested, are they interested to have economic integration with our country, Uzbekistan?
Yeah. A preferential trade area maybe. But
No, just, maybe customs union or free trade area.
No.
They are very interested. We are not interested.
We are not interested.
We are also interested, but not at that level, because if we are going to be fully integrated with China, because they have very strong our industry will not be able to compete with them. All right? So our economy is not ready yet. If we are very ready, then it's okay. All right? Good. Capitalists.
In our capitalist economy, we think the fourth level would best suit our economy, as common market allows us to move money and labor. It also increases collaboration with other countries. An example for this can be NAFTA, the establishment of NAFTA, where the export and import between three countries is
Okay. So we said for capitalistic nations, trade is very important. Why do countries economically integrate?
Make
What's
profit,
the purpose?
Make profit, make money.
What's the purpose? The main purpose is to increase trade by reducing restrictions. It's the main purpose. Okay? So which means that for capital is very important, and they try to do it. European Union. Okay? Common market. Good. Next one. What is the level of international labor migration from each economy? From planned economy, from state capitalistic, and from capitalist economies. Likelihood of labor migration. You may consider both inflow and outflow. All right, again, planned economy. What about the labor migration practices?
Within the country?
No, within the country it was clear, right? In the case of Soviet Union, labor mobility was perfect. You can work any place, in any place, it was no problem. You can travel from one area to another without even having passport unless you take planes, right? It was no problem. What about without other countries? Why?
Bad relationship
It was banned. There were restrictions. If you consider Cuba or North Korea, they have the same problem. Labor migration or migration usually has restrictions. Okay? Restrictions. Good, it's low. What about state capitalists?
In state capitalism.
Yes, international labor migration.
So we think that inflow is high and outflow as well is on a high level because as we can see now, a lot of youngsters are moving to study in China and to continue working there. And of course, a lot of Chinese wish to move to another country because they have earned some money and they can afford to move, for example, to USA or to Europe in order to make their life better.
So again, if you consider the Chinese case, the outflow is also very high. Therefore, we have those Chinatowns in many countries, yes, which means that there is big community. Okay, so they are traveling mainly for labor purposes in some places. Okay. And inflow to China regarding labor migration, now it's increasing because they are getting more and more industrialized. You can find many Asian people too working in Beijing and some areas. Okay, even though there is population available. Okay, it's increasing because capital.
In our economy, we are open to migrants, all levels of theories, like neoclassical, human capital, new economic theory, human social principles, math level, and FDX. Because all of these reasons for migration increases both countries' GDPs and individuals, citizens' savings.
Good. So again, in capitalistic nations where economic growth is relatively high, stronger nations, they need migrant labor a lot. We know it. And regarding inflow and outflow, labor migration is the highest. Mainly inflow of labor migration is the highest in capitalistic nations. Okay? Good. Next. How important is the issue of climate change in each economy? The problem of climate change. Which economy is more effective to reduce the level of pollution, for example? So planned economy, in planned economy, what do you think, that there is no climate change issue?
No, there is.
Because it's government, it's command economy. Right, it's true. But of course, climate change experience as well. For example, in Uzbekistan, we have Aral Sea problem, which is big climate change problem, right? Why did it happen? Because during Soviet Union, we were using all of that money, all of that water for irrigation to grow more cotton, more fields, yes. And there was less and less water flowing into the sea, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller, right? But Soviet Union, which they did it, they also could just ban irrigation system. So this year you don't have to produce any cotton because they have to fill the sea again. They could do it. State capitalists.
So the issue of climate change is it's not so important, I think, for example, in China, because it's much more important for them to make profit and to improve economically than just keeping their environment very clear.
But there is a big problem with ecology, with air today. They have very high volume of illnesses connected to respiration, air with air.
Air pollution. Okay. So climate change is a big issue for China too. Okay. Why? But for them, as from the statistics, we know that improving life standards is more important. It seems that more important than climate issue. But of course, we know from the all of the statistics and evidence that they are moving into service sector, which means there is high likelihood of those problems to be lower. What about effectiveness of reducing it? Does Chinese government, are they able to reduce it? Can they do it?
They can,
but it takes time.
If government wants to do it, because it's privately owned, state owned, they can stop production in one day, if they want.
But
they don't.
No.
Because it's important to the economy. Okay, good. Capitalists?
It's very big problem for us because with lots of factories, pollution is high. It's hard to reduce pollution, and it causes environmental degradation and resource extermination.
Okay, in terms of capitalistic economy, it's very interesting, right? You know, it means that private ownership, so the degradation of the resources is highly possible in capitalistic nations. But from practice, we see that in those capitalistic nations, namely, that environmental issue is the lowest.
Because they already developed.
Because they already developed. Okay? Developed. So now, they want to breathe better air. You know, they have to have better life. Okay? Good. Provide arguments for foreign direct investment, inflows and outflows from each economy. Let's make it quick. What about planned economy? Was there FDI inflow? You cannot say no. There was, but it was too low. Okay. Outflow?
Well, maybe to other like Soviet
allies like Cuba, okay, so North Korea, they have invested. Okay, good. State capitalists?
So, in case of China, they got a lot of foreign direct investment, but at the same time they send, for example, to Africa, to some Asian countries.
Yes. State-owned enterprises, we already know, if those receiving investment, those state-owned enterprises in China, they are receiving 1/3 of investment inflow to emerging economies, which means it's huge. They are attracting a lot. Okay, as we already discussed, what the reason. Okay, good. What about outflow again?
Outflow, yes, they send a lot of investment to some
wealth funds
developing
that we already taught. Now they're also investing. Those BRICS countries, right? Okay, good. Capitalists?
FDI is a good practice for our economy because in developed countries they try to import and export the best products, or try to invest in developing countries to establish their companies in a new market.
Good. Inflow and outflow of investment, FDI is the highest in
developed countries.
Developed capitalistic nations. Okay, good. Which economies are more prone to global value chains? Which economies they are practicing global value chains more?
Capitalistic ones.
Purely capital.
What about planned? You could, but it was very low. Alright? Quality was low, which means that of goods and services, goods, because the value chain was not practiced. What about the state capitalists? Global value chain.
They're doing it very much.
And another argument regarding planned economy, because the economy was closed, they were not trading with many other countries. It's impossible to practice global value chain, which includes multiple countries, right?
So we practice global value chain because we have some international trade.
From the table which was provided in this lecture slide, we saw that China, among all other BRICS countries, right, has, they're practicing global value chain, the highest value chain. You're trying to improve goods and services or the quality and gaining bigger market shares. Okay? Capitalists?
In our economies, global value chain is highly important because our market is open and everyone tries to attract more customers to increase their shares in the world market and to increase efficiency of the production of goods.
So without global value chain now, surviving in competitive market is very difficult. Okay? For capitalists is very important. Last question. What is the likelihood of state failure in each economy? Or what about financial crisis? Planned economy already failed. If you ask those economists, they would say that it's mainly because of the inefficiency practices. And what about regarding crisis in planned economy? Did they ever experience any crisis, financial crisis?
At the end, once. No.
At the end. At the end. But during those 7 years. No, because it's planned economy. Those supply and demand is always stable. That the crisis usually goes because of sharp reduction in aggregate demand, right? Which it's impossible to practice in planned economies. Okay. In state capitalism.
So we think that the likelihood of state failure is very low because, for example, at some point, as you show us, they can intervene and prevent the crisis or the increase of economy, so that it would be stable.
There is intervention of the
government.
And as well, financial crisis can be stopped by government if they take action and correct it.
Okay. So what about state capitalists? Financial crisis. Let's consider about financial crisis.
Financial crisis, there was several examples. For example, with the establishment of NAFTA, Mexico gained huge money in 1 year and lost everything in the future and in the next year. And there was also a financial crisis in 2008 year in the
US.
and the global market.
So,
but there was a political issue, not economical issue. It was, because of the political issue.
So regarding financial crisis, okay, capitalist countries are more likely to experience it because there is no government intervention, or at least, okay. So one reason why state capitalism became so popular, it's one reason because of those great recession which happened in capitalistic country. After that one, those countries, now if it's capitalism, mixed economy, still economy is prone to financial crisis. Why in state capitalism, it is stable. It's enough, okay? So now we are done with our sentence.